Hi, and welcome to the Grove Podcast. I'm Matt Battiali, your host. In these episodes, we try and bring you companies and people and discussions that we at Mangrove Investor feel are important. These are the parts of the business world that maybe you don't see every day. So we try and highlight nonprofits, private companies, and even some public companies, and show you the good that they're doing. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and thanks very much for listening. In this episode of the Grove Pod, we sit down with CEO and founder of Shore Buddies Stuffed Animals, Malte Niebelshuetz. And Malte, I have a lot of time for Malte. He's a very interesting guy. Moved to California from Germany, didn't speak English, and went on to found a very successful company which is grounded in sustainability. And if you know anything about retail is a hard business to get into. Like it's hard to make it work. And Malte's decisions to go with sustainability and go and use recycled materials made everything harder. So I was, really interested in him. He's got just an absolutely wonderful outlook, and he's been a mentor of mine and Mike's actually in building Mangrove. So I hope you enjoy this pod. So our guest today is Malte Niebelshuetz, and Malte is the founder and CEO of Shore Buddies. Thank you very much for being with us today, Malte.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm super excited to chat.
Well, I am too. This is right up our alley at Mangrove. I have a lot of interest in green companies, sustainable companies, and the idea that you guys are using recycled plastic to make your toys is brilliant. So I really want to start with you and how you got here. So what's your background, Malte?
So what's my background and where do we even start, right? As you probably hear from the accent, I'm originally from Germany, but for the last 11 years, I called beautiful San Diego and Southern California home. And that's also kind of like, an interesting story. Like how I ended up here is, sometimes you just have to take chances and kind of like believe and trust the signs that are kind of like put in towards your directions, and kind of the typical saying, you're always just a half second away from a complete different life, and just saying yes to a 2-year opportunity in San Diego really was a life-changing decision.
That's awesome. So what was the opportunity that you went to San Diego for?
I just really was 28 back at that time. Mm-hmm. And the ex-wife got a job opportunity here in San Diego. She's a scientist and was a 2-year program with UC San Diego. And I finally even not have heard of San Diego back at that time, right? So she literally had like job applications all around the world, and one of them apparently went out to San Diego, and she calls me when I'm sitting in my office. I was working for corporate back then in Germany, in Düsseldorf. And she calls me and is like, "Hey, Malte, I got this job opportunity here in San Diego." And I was like, "How is that going to work out?" She was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "San Diego, Southern California, Spanish? None of us speak Spanish. How is that going to work out?" She was like, "Malte, no, San Diego, California. Have you heard of it? English. Can you do that?" I was like, "Okay, I probably can get along with that." But I did not know it existed, right? So like I literally went to Google image search, and the first thing that I saw was like Sunset Surf right in front of Crystal Pier. I don't know if you're
I'm familiar.
And I was like, wow, that looks nice. And like, what is the weather there? 68 degrees year round, 300 sunny days. Matt, I kid you not.
Exactly like Dusseldorf. Exactly
like Dusseldorf. I look outside my office window, September 16, 2010, rainy snow. I was like, all right, let's go.
That's right.
I walk into my boss's office across the hallway. It's like, "Hey, Marcus, I quit. I'm moving to San Diego, California." And he was like, "Okay, I just overheard your conversation. It's kind of Friday night. Let's make an HR appointment next week. You want to sleep it over?" And I was like, No, no, no. Like we're gonna start the period right now because in Germany it's like typically like 3 months you have until you are allowed or like like protection for the employee, but it also goes like when you quit your job, it's 3 months. So like I was like, okay, it starts right now,
Oh, wow.
and then we were out, and then the journey began. 2 years turned into 4 years, and then in 2014 I started Shore Buddies, and yeah, almost 8 years later, now it's like literally from San Diego to the world, kind of
Yeah.
like funny how the circle closes, right? So like
Yeah.
I left Germany, came here, started Shore Buddies in San Diego, and then this summer, we had the market entry in Germany with Shore Buddies.
No kidding. That's really cool. So, all right. So let's get to Shore Buddies. Do you have a background in retail, in manufacturing? How did you come to this?
um, I have not a background in this whatsoever. I have no background in retail, in toys. My background, what I went to school for, is tech. Like I'm like an IT guy,
Oh,
and I combined it with business administration, if
mm-hmm.
you will. So I kind of have like a tech heavy MBA.
Gotcha.
And that was my first job. Like the one I quit in Düsseldorf was where I was responsible for a global intranet. And what we pretty much built back at that time was an entire, yes, like cloud environment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
kind of like everything like SaaS based,
Yeah.
but within a corporation. So like we developed, like virtual team rooms and virtual, yeah, like we like like Dropbox or Google Drive, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yep.
Very early on. That was back in 2008. So and that definitely helped me, like really construct Shore Buddies the way it was. Like Shore Buddy itself, the idea kind of like really sprang from, okay, this is an interesting idea that could be something to really have a major impact on the world
Mm-hmm.
and find and present a good solution. But the background kind of really helped me, like the process management and thinking, like how you think in processes and kind of like put all of those things together.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what do you do with coding and stuff. That definitely helped like building Shore Buddies. So like we started as a super 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 small company. I still would consider ourselves that. um, but with a very lean management, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
we outsourced everything, and kind of like what was an eye opener to like construct a company like this was the 4 Hour Work Week. Great book by Tim Ferriss. So like
Mm-hmm.
everyone highly and to read that book. It has a catchy title, and the cover is like a guy, hanging out like between palm trees in his hammock. But what really teaches you is really structure your company, like and know how to bootstrap and outsource the right things, and really utilize the global world we live in with very limited resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I know your advice has helped Mike and I a lot in terms of how we've structured and stayed lean as well. Because yeah, starting a company is it's not at all as easy as I thought it would be. But one thing about Shore Buddies that you're creating things, so you've got to source your fabrics, and you've got to source your fills, and you've got to source your recycled materials. How did that all come about? Is that local San Diego, or how did you go down that path?
Yeah, absolutely. So like think about it, right? Like where it all starts is me have literally no idea. So the idea for Shore Buddies was generated by I have to like back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I came to San Diego, I have not lived by the ocean, right? I lived in Hamburg, but it's a huge city like by the water, but it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I first came to San Diego and like immediately fell in love with the coastline, with the beaches, and everything. And for me, what I found very interesting, it was like this entire beach cleanup movement, right? I
Mm-hmm.
really love that concept, how like people really, yeah, taking care of the things they love, right? So I found that very fascinating, like I would have never really called myself like a hardcore environmentalist back in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But now what really made me think was seeing all those activists and being like super engaged, right? They were like literally were doing way more on the activism side than I was doing back in Germany. But what I found fascinating is that they were cleaning up the beaches, but then using plastic with like never really questioning it, right? Like there was some places were not recycling, and I remember the first beach cleanup I actually ever seen was at a restaurant with a nice ocean view, and
Mm-hmm.
like I saw like folks down on the beach like cleaning up, and I asked the waiter, "Was like, what is this going on?" Like I thought it was like an oil spill or something. And he's explaining that all to me, like, no, it's one of the nonprofit organizations. San Diego Coastkeeper actually was that. He mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that great organization, by the way. San Diego Coastkeeper were like doing the beach cleanup, it's all volunteers and just picking up the trash, and literally taught me all about the problem of ocean plastic pollution in a 2-minute pitch. And once he was done with his spiel, like he puts like a water cup in front of me and it comes in a plastic. I was like, dude, this is like literally where it starts, like
Yeah.
we need to fix that, right? And he was so passionate and so engaged with that. But then without a second thought, it's like, oh, here's a plastic cup. And I asked him, like, where does that end? It's like, there's a recycle? No, it just goes right in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh. I was like, holy cow, like that's crazy. Like how can it be so unaligned? And in Germany, for me, recycling was something like just growing up with,
Right.
like really being kind of like from the get-go, like you learn that like the thing that was missing for me actually growing up was what is happening afterwards, right?
Right.
So like we recycle all of those things, but then what is coming out of that, right? So now picture me like sitting on the beach, like confused in these two worlds, right? Like the recycling is not really happening, no one does that, they're cleaning up the beach, but it all comes like it ends up there. So like how do we solve that, right? So like where's this green California everyone is talking about? And then one day I literally like come like sitting in my apartment and reading this article about this company called Patagonia, and like that was
Yeah.
the first time really like getting involved with them or hearing about them. I mean, they have been inspiration like throughout the journey on so many different levels, right? But that was like the first thing, right? And like and I learned that they are making t-shirts and jackets all from recycled plastic bottles. And for me, like a big light bulb was like, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
possible? You can do that? That's like literally the solution to everything, right? Like this is literally, you can do something with it. And then entrepreneurial spirit kicks in. At that point, I already started an IT consulting company here, like kind of like a SaaS company, but
Mm-hmm.
learn these things. Well, then let's not go into that. But right, like so I really like learned about Patagonia, and like this entrepreneurial spirit kicks in, looking for pen and paper to write down ideas. What else can you make from recycled plastic? And Matt, I'm not kidding you, right? Like I get up, like I was reading it on my laptop, put the laptop aside, and the first thing I saw was a stuffed animal. Like, and I looked at the stuffed animal, and was a seagull I once bought in Germany and made all the way over to San Diego with me. And I'm looking at it, and it's like, if you can make a T-shirt, you can probably make a stuffed animal. And then it's like, was like, okay, cool. Now you have this idea, and then kind of like a curious person, I wonder what is actually needed to make that happen, right? So and you look into things, and that's why I'm saying like it's like this company could have not been started 20, 30 years ago, right? But the
Right.
internet, Google is your friend, and Alibaba is your friend, like how it connects you with suppliers. And it's almost scary. Like I don't want to say how easy it is, because that sounds just wrong on so many levels. But like the access that you have to the world out there is totally like on your fingerprints, right? I mean, 20 years ago, like to find out someone's phone number, like you might have go to a library, find the phone book. Now you have a freaking computer that is capable of so many things in your palm, like every single minute. That's insane.
It is, I think that's a great story, because it speaks to your limitations are between your ears in this world. I mean, if you can dream it up, you can do it. I think that's awesome. Back to Patagonia, I remember I bought a pair of board shorts, and I didn't know much. I knew Patagonia was a great outdoor clothing wear company, but I didn't know much about their kind of the way they were recycling things until I bought this pair of board shorts, and the little tag that came with it described how this was made from. It was so many 2-liter bottles, plastic bottles, and that was one of the best pairs of board shorts I ever owned because it wore like iron because it was plastic.
Yeah, that's another thing with them is like the entire like trade quality, right? Like just not the way they source things.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like the way they think it through, right? It's like, okay, what is happening with that, right? Like we want our customer to have like they're like the opposite of fast fashion, right? They're
Yes,
like so many
exactly.
things going on in fashion where it's oh yeah, like wear this for like 3, 4 times, but then you need a new shirt, right? Because hey, you always need to look fresh. So it's you kind of go there. It's like, okay, buy this jacket from us, and it's yours for your lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't lose it. Like we cannot guarantee for that. So like, be careful of your stuff. But like this thing is built to last.
Yep. It's the kind of thing that I have 2 daughters and they're very into fast fashion, and I find it to be very off-putting because it lasts the clothes last 4 washes, 5 washes, and that's it. And what's interesting to me is that I over the years have collected a few Patagonia and other brands clothes that do last. And things that I bought in the early 90s are now in my daughter's closet because she takes them from me because they're the most comfortable clothing, right? Because they just, once they wear in, they're perfect. And so we talk about those. I haven't convinced them yet because they have to look fresh. Now let's talk about the complication of sourcing your material. So you have to source recycled material. I know recycled plastic is more expensive than virgin plastic. I mean, how are you competing with other companies, or are you just not really competing with them and it's a different market because of the sustainability angle?
It's a little bit of both. Is I guess the right but confusing answer. So let's let me unpack that a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And I always really believe like Tesla, like who follows their story, it was a really well thought concept, right? So like you work and offer a solution, and at the beginning you have your early adapters,
Right.
right? You're like, okay, cool, this is new, right? It's and I truly believe you have to bring something new to the market,
Mm-hmm.
to disrupt the common system. And I really do believe Shore Buddies is not only capable of doing that, it's already doing it,
Yeah.
right? Like the toy industry is a different aspect. Talking about fast fashion, right? Like toys. I mean, you have kids, man. You know
Yeah.
how fast toys get boring. That's a very interesting aspect, but that's definitely changing. That's 100%. Yeah, kids these days they know what impact they have,
Yeah.
and that's the beautiful thing with show buddies. But yeah, how do you get started? You have to have your early adapters, right? Like, and at the beginning, it's definitely more expensive than virgin plastic to use recycled material, right? And it's another process that is in there, but that's kind of like where it was for me. It's a solution to plastic because plastic just doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
At society, at one point, we really have to figure out what we gonna do with all this plastic we created. I mean, this stuff just got invented like 100 years ago, and like even the best like guesses, like the plastic we have, it kind of like goes away like 500 to 600 years, like the typical
Mm-hmm.
plastic ball. Meaning every piece of plastic we ever created is still
Still
somewhere
around.
out there.
Unless we burned it.
And
Yeah.
there's good plastic, like plastic definitely like accelerate us as society, but we have to rethink the way we use it. If we just, produce it to throw it away, that's not gonna last, right? Like make plastic applicable for applications where you really need that durability, where you really need that lightweight, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like when you have emergency situations like a hurricane that we just had, coming
Yeah.
through Florida,
Yeah.
which is a really, really bad thing. But in cases and situations like that, we rely on plastic, to take care of the folks that are heavily impacted from that, right? So this is really where it becomes handy. But in general, there's really no need, like, to create so much plastic in this throwaway society. So
Yeah.
this is kind of like where that vision comes from, right? How can we do something here? And then sure, but it's not only that it's made from recycled material, it is really the educational part we can bring to that. as well. And the early adapters is the ones that really see your vision, and they want to support you in this change. And that's the ones really you have to address first, right? But
Yeah.
then it's coming to make a critical mass to really bring it there. And like Tesla did that phenomenal, right? So they
Hmm.
started with the Roadster, who had their like early adapters, they had their first fans that were like really believed in the company and believed in the vision. And then they released the Model S, opened that club, if you will, to a few more people
Yep.
on that scale, but showed it is doable, And then the Model 3 was obviously the game changer
Yeah.
when they brought it like and made the critical mass, And um I really think like that's what it is for sustainability in toys, Like you
Hmm.
really you have to show that you can compete eventually. At a compatible price.
Right.
At a compatible price, to really take the Tesla example again,
Yeah.
I mean, it is the same price or cheaper, and it's better.
Right. Then I guess the tipping point in toys will be when Shore Buddies, when using recycled materials isn't the outlier, it's not using recycled materials. That's the outlier. Not using sustainable materials. When all
Yeah,
toys have
yeah,
to incorporate this stuff.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're really seeing the change, and I can tell you, like for being in the like 2018 was kind of like the really the breakthrough moment.
Hmm.
And for two reasons. So 2018 was when like before that it started out and people were like, okay, this is really cool, this is amazing, but yeah, is it really worth it, isn't
Right.
that like, how do you come up, like, good luck, Malte, good for you, right, kind of like event. 2018 comes around and all of a sudden ocean plastic pollution was on everyone's mind. And I remember it was Net Geo magazine, the June issue actually. They had on the cover this upside down plastic bag, kind of like shaped like an iceberg, and dedicated the next decade towards ocean plastic pollution.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, this is a game changer,
Yeah.
right?" And
Yeah.
coincidentally, at that very same month, I received my green card, which kind of, I want to say, like, always held me back a little bit, to really
Yeah.
go to go all in with that. And then those two things happened like in a really short period of time where it's like, okay, cool, like we're on to something here. We have to bring this to the next level, and that's when we started showing the line at trade shows internationally. And it was very interesting also to see and to learn, how sustainability is the same word, but a different, like it's differently lived, in different part
Yes,
of
very
the
much so.
country.
I think that's one of to me, that's one of the most difficult things about, we're looking at companies and businesses, and I don't like the term ESG because I find it so highly politicized, particularly in investing. So I'm in the investing world, but at the same time, every single mining company's annual report starts with its environmental and safety and governance section, because every single mining company, the public mining company, that's where they have to live. That's where things start for them, and so it's such a dichotomy. So when you talk to the people who do the beach cleanups and they're passionate about sustainability and they're paying a little bit more money to get organic produce, or buying toys that are made out of recycled material, it's very different from the conversations that I hear in some of the financial circles, like that ESG is a fraud and it's just a joke, and you constantly are seeing funds being investigated for greenwashing because they're telling their shareholders that they are investing that money in sustainable companies, but there's no, you can go out and measure revenue, but you can't go out and measure sustainability. So how do even the experts in the space, like they know what it looks like, but they can't give you a good definition of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And The entire ESG topic is such a interesting field, and I 100% agree. There's been so much greenwashing and all of that happening, but at the same time, the good news is we really start thinking about it,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's getting better and better. And the ESG goals, like in theory, are something that is really, really good and makes 100% sense, especially from an investor perspective on that end. It's like I literally like, okay, right, like we follow the money trail, right? And in the end, it's like I'm investing into something where I
Yeah.
really can see and make a difference,
Yeah.
right? So like in companies now, are asking and have to report like their impact report, right? What
Mm-hmm.
are they doing on the social level, on the governance level, on the environmental level, right? Like how does
Yeah.
this all like fit together? And it's very interesting to see, like in the EU, they already have like established many different standards, and one specific standards where like all the publicly traded companies already have to report on. In the US, we
Mm-hmm.
are still like ESG is something like very like stretchable.
Yes.
So companies started doing their impact report, but like those standards are not really there in place,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we are getting there. So, and it was very funny to see and to know that is that we as store buddies as a supplier for those companies are able to help them with their ESG goals, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
we literally have a supply chain, how we make those products, right? And we have an impact report. I was just recently at a major trade show for toys, the Dallas Toy Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's New York, but that kind of is coming back finally next year again. Always so much fun to be in New York. Fortunately, it's also not gonna be in February anymore, Matt. Like I'm no you South travel guy, and you probably have been in New York several times. If you have like it's always February. It's like
Not.
why? Like
Yeah.
the
I don't
worst.
want to be there in February.
Yeah, so they finally moved the New York Toy Fair to I think September next year. It's when it is.
That's better.
So like we want a little bit. Like it's not the ideal month, but September is kind of nice in New York. But this year was in Dallas, so kind of like the last 2 years with COVID, shake everything up a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were at this Dallas Toy Fair, and besides Sure Buddies, we also started distributing other sustainable toy brands, right? Who kind of
Mm-hmm.
like follow the same mission, would just follow the same paths, right? Literally, not just okay, we have a toy, and we're gonna like put a green label on it and keep selling it now as green. No, like literally toys that want to change how things are
Yeah.
done, right? So and at this trade show, they are all the major retailers, right? So they are looking for new products. And good friend of mine here in San Diego is with one of the big the big of the clubs, right? The club warehousing like
Oh, yeah.
Costco,
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
all of those. And he had a very interesting presentation at an event here, and I had a chance to talk to him a little bit about afterwards. We became good friends, and it's interesting how those companies now really push those sustainability, those ESG goals in front, right? So they all came to that show, the major retailers, with the goal to find sustainable, to find social good products. And
Hmm.
by their new regulations, 20% of the product they will bring in, and this is just where we're starting now, have to be according to those ESG goals, right? So they're
Oh, I
already
didn't know
making
that.
buying decisions. They're already making buying decisions
Yeah.
towards green and good companies, right? So that are really like live those values because they see how important it is. Like I mean, in really, really easy language, if we keep destroying the planet that we live on, we don't have anyone to serve anymore with any product or anything like that, right? Like
Right.
it's kind of like we're shooting ourselves in the knee here.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that they had mandated 20%. Is that a government regulation in the States, or how does that work?
So those are the ESG goals
Mm-hmm.
by the UN that
Oh, by
kind
the
of
UN.
like
Okay.
those companies gonna look before to like we are in line with the sustainability goals with the UN, and dedicating towards that, right?
Gotcha.
So
Yep.
and you said for the big mining companies, like a Target, a Walmart, and all of those, they
Mm-hmm.
have the annual reports, right? Or like
Yep.
on the toy level, it's a
Yep.
Mattel and Hasbro, all the publicly traded companies, they're already publishing their ESG reporting
Yeah.
and scorecard and sustainability impact reports. So it's already out there, and investors, they're really, really looking like, okay, what do you guys really do here?
Yeah. I mean, that to me, one of the things that convinced me to do this, to that investors need to understand this direction. When I looked at the money that companies like BlackRock were investing, and I don't even mean the bond side, I just mean the investments, direct investments into companies were in the trillions of dollars. You can say what you want about it being a fad, but the fact is that the money tells the story. And there's serious money being invested into these sustainable companies. I mean, that tells me the future, and it doesn't surprise me at all that this is the direction that the big retailers are going as well. Because clearly, I mean, we just going back to Patagonia, we know that there's a customer base for Patagonia clothes. Even though they're at the highest end of the retail, they make a high quality product and they do it sustainably, and we pay for that, but we still can consume it. It's not crazy. It's still, it made them one of the most popular brands out there,
Yeah, and I always say that, right? Like I'm a big believer of using business for change. Like for
Yes.
me, that's literally the easiest way, the direct and the fairest way of democracy, right?
Yeah. Market
It's like
forces.
if the business is not providing what the customer wants, then the business will be out of business pretty
Right.
soon, right? It's like it's a free market. You can go and look around, and what I think it's why it's really coming in such a full force is, like back to the little device we have in front of us, like the transparency we have, the
Yeah.
access we have,
Yep.
like companies are in so much like checked by their customers, like the greenwashing, like the capability of keep doing that. I
Right.
think it's getting less and less for companies.
It is
Like the
for
like
sure.
the young generation, the millennials. I learned the other day actually that I'm a millennial. I thought like the millennials are younger than me, but apparently I'm still a millennial, so good for me, I guess. But the younger generations, like we have talks at schools, they already know all about that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? They know about how important the environment is to taking care of it, how important diversity is, all of those things, they learn that really from an early age on. And those are our customers, not only of the future, those are already our customers
Right.
today.
Right.
Like, and influencers, like every parent I talk to, it's their biggest influencer is not someone on TikTok, their biggest influencer, those are their kids, and they
Yeah.
want to make sure, hey, this is keep going.
Yeah. It's interesting because I really did see this coming from the mining industry first, because two things happen to the mining industry. One, it takes an enormous amount of money to build a mine, and you can't move it if the local community gets angry at you. You're kind of stuck. And the other aspect was the advent of cell phones, because every person carries a cell phone practically, and every cell phone makes that person an activist. So if you're a mining company and you think you can get away with letting your mine drainage go somewhere, drain into a stream, or you can kill a bunch of fish, everybody knows, because all you have to do is have a cell phone and connect it to the internet, to social media, and it's out there. It's not the same as it used to be, where you could get away with that stuff and people didn't discover the bad stuff you did for 10 or 15 years. And so what that market pressure made the mining industry really change first. I mean, I've written a lot about what I call new mining, and it's kind of, on the surface, you think, oh, mining that's bad. We don't sustainability. The sustainable people don't like mining, but the fact is, if you want batteries, if you want new Teslas, if you want windmills, you need a lot of metal to do it. And it's a benefit to us that the market has already forced these mining companies to get better, to get more sustainable, to get cleaner, more transparent in their businesses. It's better for us. So to me, that was one of those aha moments where you say, oh, the market's working and the market's driving these companies in this direction. But I didn't really expect, like, retail's not quite the same, but I guess it will be. It needs to go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's any way going back to it. Like we're above the tipping point. And I can literally tell you firsthand. Like 2018 when we first started, it was like, okay, like this is cute, this is nice, and now it's needed. Now it's literally needed, a product that is needed. And you're 100% right. And kind of like using the social media world, now the things for going viral, right? It's kind of like the slogan. Things go viral. Like you cannot hide big holes. I think that maybe might kind of like started with the mining world first. Like you can hide them, but now like you can go like literally on Google satellite and kind of like show those things. And like there's certain elements like the world, like every sport is watched now, like, and this is kind of like a little bit more diversified who has access to kind of like those views, and I think in the retail industry, it's in the toy industry, you cannot hide it either, right? So like now those kids learn about like how important it is to take care of the environment in schools and all of that, right? And now they're sitting there, and then Christmas is coming around. They get a bunch of presents, they all unwrap them, and it's fun. But then there's this one video from last year when it went viral. That girl just started crying, of the amount of trash that was like produced, like just for like those new toys. And I mean, it's really true, and not only retail but in toy industry, you see the things are like moving in the right direction, like people taking plastic out of their packaging, where it's not needed. It's like we're getting away from, okay, let's like make the biggest box, even if there's like only a tiny little piece in there, because then when people recognize, no, we're like getting the complete other direction. We have educated customers who are looking behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yep. Do you remember, this might be before your time, but compact discs used to come in big packages, and they were doing it when compact discs first came out. So I was a tape guy, but then compact discs came out, but they were really easy to steal. So the manufacturers, they were trying to make the packaging like albums, like the old vinyl albums. And there was a big backlash even back then. So this would have been in the 90s. There was a backlash against all the waste, because there was so much waste, and they changed to the jewel cases that we have now, where it's just a cellophane wrapped. Yeah, so that was a I remember that pretty clearly. But I'm old. I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer. Malte, I have one last question for you. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that we're trying to do at Mangrove too. You have a program where you divert money from sales to a cause. So you help save marine life. It says your website says $1 from every product purchase goes to help save marine life. Talk to me a little bit about that and what you're doing and why.
And yes, 100%, right? So like it's kind of the full scale, right? Like we literally eat our own dog food, right? We do and say we do social good out there.
Yep.
And there's so many elements to do that. And we did not want to choose one over the other. We want to be like the full on scale concept. In fact, we recently, and I tell you, man, it was not easy to do that. We recently became a California Social Purpose Corporation. And what that means is that we literally were able to write into our business DNA that we do more than just profit, right? We literally have in our paperwork, we have the triple bottom line, right? Of course, it's profit. Like it's what's needed. That's what drives businesses, right? Like
Right.
you have to generate a profit,
Absolutely.
like you have to keep the engine running. And then the other two things is like we exist for education and we will only utilize sustainable materials, right? And like we also are not shy that like the future might change and that sustainable means something 10 years different from now, right? So this
Right.
will allow us to kind of like be like state of the art at all times. We have to like go with the innovation.
Mm-hmm.
But giving back is also one incremental things with that. And we do that in different ways, right? We literally partner with nonprofit organizations that we do outreach events together. Actually, this Sunday morning, I'm going to be at the Encinitas, which is a city here in San Diego, North County, Encinitas Eco Festival with one of our nonprofit partners. And we, showcase kind of like what is able to do at a beach cleanup, like collect the trash, making little out of that, and kind of really focus on the educational moment, right? So like really, utilizing that and then talking to kids and talk about and really bring those sustainable values, like almost like as a second language early on, right? So like I'm bilingual, I speak German, but I learned all my English after moving to San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And I'm always looking at people who like speak literally 2-3 languages, like no accent, Switzerland sentence and stuff like that. It's like a superpower, It's like,
Yes,
wow,
indeed.
And if we do that with environmental values from an early age on, those values will last for a lifetime. So like this is the way. So we partner with nonprofits. Like we're hosting beach cleanups for educational things together. We go together to schools, and started that here in San Diego. Amazing organizations here, and now like really bringing that like to the entire world, and then always partner with local organizations there. Really talk about the issue and getting people involved. Like that's all about. You need those organizers, those teachers on the ground, right? Always say we are at Shore Buddies, a handful of people. We cannot be everywhere. Zoom helps a little bit. Like we have classroom and talks with what we do over Zoom. But what we really want to do is like literally provide the material and kind of like educate the educator, if you will.
Yeah. You're doing it, man. I'm watching you and I'm, as we talk, even I think of the thing, oh man, we need to do that because you're building your community. And that's something that we always talk about. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we named the company Mangrove, because here in Florida, the mangrove trees build their community. And that to me is how you build a great place to live. I think you're doing it. I think it's a great thing, and I'm excited to have met you, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So you have anything you want to wrap up with?
Matt, I think we covered it all. What was there to cover in like 45 minutes? But no, man, really appreciate this conversation as well. Great chatting with you, man. Always amazing, like talking to like-minded people. And I love what you guys do over at Mangrove, right? And it's as you said, it's building the community. And community starts with your neighbor, but we are in a globalized world. Your community is what you make out of it.
I agree 100%, and I'm looking at the things you're doing in San Diego and thinking about how we can do those things here and on the East Coast. So excellent job. And thanks again for your time, Malte. Well, look at that. You made it to the end. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you want to get more of this kind of information, including a free weekly e-letter, just scroll down and sign up for the Grove. It's simple. Just give us your email address and we'll send you weekly content and we'll let you know every time there's a new podcast out. Thanks again for listening. I'm Matt Battiali. Have a great week.